The wedding photographer was still adjusting his lens when Harrison Vale, the $500 million tech CEO, whispered 7 words that would destroy everything. "I can't do this. She's here." Sophia, St. Augustine Cathedral had never seen a wedding quite like this. 600 guests filled the historic Miami venue, each having received hand-calligraphed invitations that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The bride, Margaret Winters, stood at the altar in a custom Vera Wang gown worth $50,000, her hands trembling slightly as she held a bouquet of rare Juliet roses flown in from Ecuador that morning. Harrison's face had turned the color of ash. His best man grabbed his shoulder, thinking he might faint. But Harrison wasn't ill. He was staring at row 7, where a young woman in a red dress had just taken her seat. Sophia Laurent, 23 years old, with honey-colored hair that caught the cathedral's golden light. She wasn't supposed to be there. She'd promised she wouldn't come. "Harrison," Margaret's voice was barely a whisper, but in the sudden silence of the cathedral, everyone heard it. "What's wrong?" What happened next would become the most watched wedding disaster in social media history. Harrison took 3 steps back from the altar, his Italian leather shoes echoing against the marble floor. He looked at Margaret, the woman who had stood by him for 12 years, who had worked double shifts as a nurse to keep them afloat while he built his company, who had spent the last 18 months planning this perfect day. "I'm sorry," he said, loud enough for the entire cathedral to hear. "I can't marry you. I'm in love with someone else." The gasp from 600 guests sounded like wind through a canyon. Margaret's bouquet hit the floor, rare roses scattering across white marble. Her father, a retired Marine colonel, had to be physically restrained by 2 groomsmen. Harrison's mother collapsed into tears, and through it all, the photographer kept shooting, his camera capturing every devastating second. But here's what those wedding guests didn't know. This moment of betrayal would become the catalyst for one of the most incredible reversals of fortune ever witnessed in Miami's elite social circles. 5 years later, a single photograph would bring Harrison Vale, the mighty tech mogul, literally to his knees in a Starbucks, sobbing in front of strangers, begging for a forgiveness that would never come. Before we get into this incredible story of betrayal, karma, and ultimate redemption, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button if you believe what goes around comes around. Subscribe to hear more unbelievable true stories from the world of the ultra-wealthy. And comment below where you're watching from. I'm curious, how many of you have witnessed a wedding disaster? Let me know in the comments. To understand the magnitude of what Harrison threw away that day, you need to know where he came from. Harrison's parents arrived in Miami from Romania in 1985 with nothing but 2 suitcases and a dream of something better. His father, Michael, worked 16-hour days as a taxi driver, while his mother, Anna, cleaned office buildings at night. They lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Hialeah, where young Harrison slept on a pull-out couch and did his homework by the light of a single desk lamp. But Harrison had something special. A mind that could see patterns in code the way musicians hear melodies. By 15, he was building websites for local businesses. By 18, he'd earned a full scholarship to MIT. That's where he met Margaret Winters, a nursing student from Boston who was tutoring chemistry to make extra money. Margaret wasn't the prettiest girl on campus, or the richest, or the most popular. But she saw something in Harrison that others missed. While his classmates dismissed him as just another computer nerd with big dreams, Margaret recognized brilliance. More importantly, she believed in him when nobody else would. After graduation, Harrison had an idea for a revolutionary app that would change how businesses manage their supply chains. Every bank turned him down. Every investor laughed him out of their office. His parents begged him to get a real job, but Margaret never wavered. She took not 1, not 2, but 3 jobs. Day shifts at Massachusetts General, night shifts at a clinic, weekend hours at a pharmacy. For 2 years, she barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination, pouring every penny into keeping Harrison's dream alive. "You're going to change the world," she'd tell him when he wanted to quit. "I can see it, even if you can't right now." She was right. Harrison's app caught the attention of a major retailer, then another, then another. Within 3 years, his company, Valitech, was worth $50 million. Within 5 years, $500 million. Harrison moved them from their cramped Boston apartment to a penthouse in Miami's Brickell district. He bought his parents a house in Coral Gables. He paid off Margaret's student loans and bought her a Range Rover wrapped in a big red bow. But somewhere between the first million and the 500th, Harrison started changing. The man who once ate ramen noodles with Margaret while coding through the night now demanded reservations at restaurants where dinner cost $1,000. The entrepreneur who once wore the same hoodie for a week now spent $30,000 on watches. And most dangerously, the devoted partner who once called Margaret his guardian angel started noticing how other women looked at him now that he had money. Sophia Laurent entered Harrison's life at a charity gala in South Beach exactly 6 months before the wedding. She was everything Margaret wasn't. Tall where Margaret was average, blonde where Margaret was brunette, and most significantly, she was 23 years old, making her Instagram followers swoon with beach photo shoots and yoga poses on yacht decks. Sophia approached Harrison at the bar with a simple line, "You look bored with all these fake people too." It was calculated, perfect, designed to make him feel like she saw the real him. She didn't mention knowing who he was, didn't gush about his success. She played it cool, talking about art and travel, subjects Margaret never had time to explore while working 3 jobs to support his dreams. The affair started with coffee meetings that Harrison told himself were just networking, then lunches that were strictly business, then dinners where they discussed potential collaborations. Sophia was smart about it. She never pushed, never demanded, just made herself available. She'd text him funny memes during board meetings. She'd happen to be at the same restaurants. She made him feel 25 again, instead of 37. "Margaret represents everything I used to be," Harrison told his best friend David, trying to justify what he was doing. "But Sophia? She represents everything I'm becoming. Margaret reminds me of struggle. Sophia makes me feel successful." David, who had known both Harrison and Margaret since college, tried to talk sense into him. "Brother, Margaret built you. She starved so you could eat. She worked so you could dream. And now you want to throw her away because some Instagram model makes you feel young?" But Harrison's mind was made up. In his arrogance, he believed he'd outgrown the woman who'd helped him grow. He convinced himself that staying with Margaret would be settling, that he deserved someone who matched his new status. Have you ever known someone who forgot where they came from the moment they tasted success? Who threw away real love for something shiny and new? If this story hits close to home, or if you've seen this happen to someone you know, drop a comment below. Sometimes the people who lift us up are the first ones we leave behind when we reach the top. Within 6 hours of Harrison walking out of St. Augustine Cathedral, the video had 3 million views. A guest teenager had been live streaming the ceremony on TikTok, capturing every excruciating second in vertical video. The clip showed Margaret standing alone at the altar, her $50,000 dress suddenly looking like expensive armor that couldn't protect her from public humiliation. The scattered roses, her father lunging forward, her mother's scream. And worst of all, Margaret's face. The exact moment her heart shattered, preserved forever in digital amber. By morning, she was trending worldwide. #altar abandonment, runaway groom, poor Margaret. The memes came fast and cruel. Someone photoshopped her face onto the disaster girl template. Another created a remix of the abandonment set to funeral music. A Twitter account called On Left at the Altar LOL gained 100,000 followers in 24 hours just posting jokes about her pain. News outlets descended on her Brickell penthouse like vultures. Billionaire tech CEO chooses love over obligation, read the Miami Herald headline, somehow making Harrison the hero of his own betrayal. TMZ published photos of Margaret from college, old pictures where she looked exhausted from working her 3 jobs, contrasted with glamour shots of Sophia on Miami Beach. The narrative was clear and cruel. The worn-out nurse had been replaced by the shiny new model. Margaret's father, Colonel James Winters, suffered a mild heart attack that night. The man who had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan was felled by his daughter's humiliation. Her mother, Linda, had what doctors called a severe stress response. She stopped speaking entirely for 2 weeks, just staring at the wall in her daughter's childhood bedroom. But Margaret herself, she vanished. 3 days after the wedding, she liquidated everything. The Brickell penthouse, sold to a cash buyer. The Range Rover, donated to a women's shelter. Her designer wardrobe, given to Goodwill. She closed her social media accounts, changed her phone number, and bought a one-way ticket to somewhere no one would think to look for her. The only message she left was a note for her parents. "I need to disappear for a while. Please don't try to find me. I love you both." Her friends tried desperately to locate her. Her maid of honor, Jessica, hired a private investigator who traced her to Miami International Airport, then lost the trail. It was as if Margaret Winters had ceased to exist, leaving only the viral video as proof she'd ever been real. While Margaret disappeared into shadow, Harrison stepped further into the spotlight. 3 months after the cathedral disaster, he married Sophia in a lavish ceremony at Villa Vizcaya. The wedding, which reportedly cost $2 million, was featured in every luxury lifestyle magazine. Following his heart, Harrison Vale's journey to true love proclaimed the cover of Ocean Drive magazine, with a spread showing the couple laughing on a yacht. The media painted Harrison not as a villain, but as a brave romantic who'd chosen passion over convention. Business leaders praised his courage to live authentically. A famous entrepreneur tweeted, "Harrison Vale proved that success means having the guts to chase what you really want, even when it's hard. Respect." His business exploded. 2 weeks after his wedding to Sophia, Valitech landed a $2 billion contract with the Department of Defense. His company's valuation hit $1 billion. Forbes put him on their 40 under 40% list with a profile that barely mentioned Margaret, referring to her only as a college relationship that Harrison outgrew. Sophia transformed into the perfect CEO's wife on Instagram. Every morning she posted photos of their breakfast spreads overlooking Biscayne Bay, workout videos from their private gym, charity galas where she wore gowns worth more than most people's cars. The couple's combined social media following hit 5 million. They were invited on podcasts, featured in documentaries about power couples, and became the face of new Miami money. "We can't help who we love," Harrison said on a popular podcast, his arm around Sophia. "Sometimes the heart wants what it wants, and fighting that is just living a lie. Margaret deserves someone who is all in with her. By leaving, I set her free to find that person." The host nodded sympathetically. No one asked about the 3 jobs Margaret had worked. No one mentioned the years she'd sacrificed. In the retelling, she became just a footnote in Harrison's success story, the starter girlfriend before the real love story began. But karma has a way of keeping receipts, and Harrison Vale's bill was about to come due. The Instagram posts told one story, but behind the filtered photos, Harrison Vale's perfect new life was rotting from the inside. It started small, charges on the American Express that made even a millionaire's eyes water. Sophia's little shopping trip to Bal Harbour came back at $87,000. A weekend in New York somehow cost $143,000. By month 6 of their marriage, she was burning through $100,000 like it was pocket change every single month. "It's an investment in our image," Sophia would say, holding up another Hermes bag. "You want a wife who looks like she belongs next to a billionaire, don't you?" Harrison, who deep down still remembered eating dollar menu items with Margaret while building his company, would feel his stomach twist. But he'd smile and nod because admitting concern would mean admitting he'd made a mistake. Year 2 brought worse problems. Harrison's business partner, Keith Morrison, had always been a player, but even Harrison was shocked when he came home early from a Tokyo business trip to find Keith's Tesla in his driveway at 2 a.m. Sophia's explanation was smooth. Keith had been dropping off urgent contracts. But the security footage Harrison pulled the next day showed Keith arriving at 11 p.m. and not leaving until 3 a.m. The contracts, mysteriously, were nowhere to be found. Harrison confronted Sophia that weekend. Her response was masterful manipulation. Tears, accusations that he didn't trust her, reminders that she'd given up her modeling career for him. Then, when the emotions didn't work, she played her ace. "You destroyed a good woman for me, Harrison. You think anyone would respect you if you couldn't even keep the woman you burned everything down for?" She was right, and she knew it. Harrison's entire rebrand as the brave romantic who followed his heart depended on his marriage to Sophia working, so he installed more security cameras. He hired a private investigator. He became the very thing he'd once mocked, a paranoid rich man trying to buy his way out of bad decisions. Meanwhile, Sophia had hired her own team. 3 lawyers from Miami's most ruthless firm, officially just to review some investments, but Harrison knew what they were really doing, looking for cracks in the prenuptial agreement he'd insisted on. The same prenup Sophia had signed with tears in her eyes, saying, "I don't care about your money, baby. I just want you." The lawyers found their opening in Clause 17B. If Harrison was unfaithful, the prenup was void. Suddenly, Sophia was pushing him toward attractive women at parties, encouraging him to take female clients to dinner alone, even suggesting they open up their marriage to keep things exciting. Harrison realized with cold horror that his wife was trying to set him up, while Harrison drowning in the mess he'd created. Margaret Winters was building something spectacular, 4,500 miles away. She'd landed in Zurich with just 2 suitcases and a broken heart, taking a junior analyst position at a small investment firm called Alpine Partners. She used her middle name, Rose, and told everyone she was from Portland, not Miami. Nobody there knew about the viral video. She was just Rose, the quiet American who worked until midnight every night. But those late nights weren't just about avoiding memories. Margaret was developing something revolutionary, an algorithm that could predict market shifts by analyzing seemingly unrelated data points, social media sentiment, weather patterns, shipping manifests, even restaurant reservation trends. She called it Project Phoenix, though only she understood the symbolism of that name. The algorithm's first major test came 8 months into her time at Alpine. It predicted a massive tech stock crash 3 days before it happened. The firm's partners, who had ignored quiet Rose from Portland, suddenly couldn't ignore the $47 million she'd just saved them. Enter James Rothschild. Not from the famous banking family despite the name, but a self-made venture capitalist from London who'd built his fortune identifying overlooked genius. He was 42, divorced, with kind eyes and a reputation for backing projects everyone else passed on. He came to Alpine Partners looking for new investment opportunities and found himself fascinated by the American woman who'd seemingly appeared from nowhere with an algorithm that could revolutionize finance. "Your algorithm is brilliant," James told her over coffee at a quiet cafe overlooking Lake Zurich. "But you're wasting it here. This firm will take your ideas and give you a bonus. I could help you build an empire." Margaret studied him carefully. After Harrison, she'd promised herself never to trust anyone with her dreams again. But James was different. He didn't promise her the moon. He didn't try to charm her. He simply laid out a business plan, offered her 60% ownership of any company they built together, and said, "Think about it. No pressure. Some say the best revenge is massive success. Others say it's living well. But what about those who choose to disappear completely and rebuild in silence?" If you're rooting for Margaret's comeback, hit that like button right now and tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were her? Build in secret or go public with your success? The beginning of Harrison Vale's end came through a text message he wasn't supposed to see. Sophia had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower, and when it buzzed, Harrison glanced at it instinctively. The message preview showed everything. "The baby is definitely mine. Stop worrying. Harrison will never know. Danny, his younger brother, the brother who'd been staying in their guest house for the past 6 months after a rough patch with his job." The brother Harrison had been supporting financially while he got back on his feet. Harrison's hands shook as he picked up the phone. Using the face recognition he'd set up, he opened the message thread. 3 months of messages, photos, plans, and the devastating truth: Sophia was 4 months pregnant with Danny's child, but planning to pass it off as Harrison's. "We'll wait until after the baby is born." One message from Sophia read, "California law means I get half of everything plus child support. Your brother won't fight it because he'll think it's his kid. We can be together officially in 2 years." The confrontation was explosive. Sophia didn't deny it. Instead, she laughed. "You really thought someone like me loved someone like you? Harrison, you were a walking ATM with an ego problem." The divorce proceedings began the next week, but Sophia had prepared better than Harrison imagined. Those lawyers she'd hired had found more than just prenup loopholes. They documented every business dinner with female clients, every late night at the office with his assistant, even manufactured evidence of affairs that never happened. The prenup crumbled under assault from every angle. But the divorce was just the appetizer. The main course came when Harrison received a letter from Swiss lawyers representing Phoenix Technologies. The lawsuit was devastating in its simplicity. Margaret Winters was claiming her rightful 49% of Valitech, backed by documents Harrison had forgotten existed. See, back when Harrison was nobody, when Margaret was working 3 jobs to keep them afloat, she'd officially been listed as CEO-founder with a 49% stake. Harrison had promised to transfer the shares to her name after their wedding, the wedding he'd abandoned her at. Technically, legally, she still owned nearly half of his billion-dollar company. "This is extortion," Harrison screamed at his lawyers. "No," his lead attorney replied quietly, "this is contract law, and she has every receipt, every document, every email where you acknowledged her ownership. You're going to lose this." The lawsuit became public, just as the divorce details leaked. #Justice for Margaret started trending globally. Old college friends came forward with stories about Margaret's sacrifices. Former coworkers revealed how she'd collapsed from exhaustion while funding Harrison's dreams. The narrative Harrison had carefully crafted, of outgrowing an old relationship, crumbled under the weight of truth. Within 6 months, Harrison had lost everything. The divorce took $200 million. The lawsuit with Margaret was settled for another $400 million plus ongoing royalties from patents she'd helped develop. The government contract was canceled when news broke that Harrison had been under investigation for emotional distress caused to shareholders. His board of directors voted him out as CEO of his own company. The final insult came from Danny, his brother, who sold his story to a streaming service for a documentary called The Brothers' Betrayal. Even his own family was profiting from his downfall. While Harrison's world burned, Phoenix Technologies was soaring. Margaret had taken James Rothschild's offer and built something really great. Her algorithm, refined and expanded, could now predict not just market shifts but consumer behavior, supply chain disruptions, even political changes that would affect markets. Companies paid millions just to beta test the software. The IPO launch was scheduled for March 2023. The initial valuation was conservative, $500 million. But when trading opened, demand was astronomical. By close of the first day, Phoenix Technologies was valued at $3.1 billion. Margaret Winters, the woman left at the altar, was now worth more than Harrison had ever been. Forbes magazine called her for an interview. When they asked about her past, about the viral video about Harrison, she gave the same response every time. "I don't discuss ancient history. I'm focused on the future." This philosophy, never mentioning Harrison publicly, never acknowledging the pain, became part of her legend. While he was fighting lawsuits and giving bitter interviews about being betrayed, she was speaking at global economic forums about innovation and resilience. She never said his name, not once. It was as if he'd been completely erased from her story. Her relationship with James Rothschild had evolved from business to something deeper. He'd been patient, understanding, never pushing. "I know you've been hurt," he told her one evening as they watched the sunset over Lake Geneva. I'm not asking you to forget that. I'm just asking you to consider that not everyone leaves. He proposed with a simple solitaire ring during a morning hike. No cameras, no audience, just them in the mountains. She said yes, not because she needed him or his connections, but because she wanted him. Love, the second time around, felt different, calmer, safer, built on respect rather than desperation. The Forbes cover shoot happened 2 weeks after the engagement. The headline read, "The Comeback CEO of the Decade, How Margaret Winters Built a $3 billion Empire from Ashes." She looked directly into the camera, confident, successful, and completely at peace. 5 years after the cathedral disaster, Harrison Vale found himself in the marble lobby of the Burj Al Arab Hotel in Dubai, waiting for a meeting that might save what was left of his career. His net worth had shrunk to $50 million, still wealthy by most standards, but a humiliating fall from his billion-dollar peak. He was there to pitch a new startup idea to minor investors, the kind of people who wouldn't have gotten past his assistant 5 years ago. The meeting was running late. Harrison sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than most people's cars, nervously adjusting his tie. That's when he saw it, the latest issue of Forbes on the coffee table. The cover stopped his heart. Margaret looked directly at him from the glossy page, but it wasn't the Margaret he remembered. Gone was the exhausted nursing student who'd fallen asleep on his shoulder during late-night coding sessions. This woman radiated power. She wore a simple black suit that somehow looked more expensive than anything Sophia had ever bought. Her smile was confident, peaceful. The headline beside her read, "The Phoenix Rises, Margaret Winters on Building a $3 billion Empire on Her Own Terms." Harrison's hands trembled as he picked up the magazine. He flipped to the article, each page feeling heavier than the last. There she was at Phoenix Technologies headquarters. There she was speaking at the World Economic Forum. There she was receiving an award from the President of France for innovation in financial technology. But it was a small detail in one photograph that shattered him completely. On her left hand was an engagement ring, not some massive diamond like the one he'd given her, not some attention-seeking boulder like Sophia had demanded, but a simple platinum band with a modest solitaire. The caption read, "Winters, engaged to venture capitalist James Rothschild, says she's found peace in simplicity." Harrison couldn't breathe. He stumbled from the lobby to the nearest bathroom, Forbes magazine clutched in his hand. In the mirror, he saw what he'd become. Hollow eyes, premature gray in his hair, the look of a man who'd won everything and lost the only thing that mattered. He read the article 3 times, each pass revealing new wounds. The algorithm Margaret had built. She'd started developing it during those long nights when he thought she was just keeping him company while he worked. She'd been building her own dreams in silence, never asking for credit, never demanding recognition. One quote made him slide down the bathroom wall to the floor. "I'm grateful for my past, including the painful parts. Every betrayal taught me to bet on myself. Every moment of abandonment showed me I was stronger alone. I don't harbor anger toward anyone from my previous life. They gave me the greatest gift possible. They showed me exactly who I was when everything else was stripped away." She didn't mention his name once in the 8-page feature. He'd been completely erased, reduced to a vague reference to past challenges and early setbacks. He'd become nothing more than a footnote she'd stepped over on her way to greatness. The realization hit him like physical pain. He'd destroyed the one person who truly loved him for someone who'd only loved his money. He'd abandoned the woman who'd sacrificed everything for him to chase after someone who sacrificed him the moment a better opportunity appeared. Margaret had loved Harrison when he was nobody. Sophia had only loved what Harrison could buy her. Harrison spent the next 3 weeks trying to reach Margaret through every channel imaginable. Her personal number was unlisted. Phoenix Technologies' switchboard was instructed not to forward his calls. Her social media accounts didn't accept messages from people she didn't follow. She'd built a wall so complete, so impenetrable, that one of the most connected men in tech couldn't find a single crack. He hired private investigators, 3 different firms. They all came back with the same answer. Margaret Winters had learned from her viral humiliation. Her privacy was fortress level. Her inner circle was tiny and fiercely loyal. There was no approaching her without her explicit consent. Finally, in desperation, Harrison did something he'd sworn he'd never do. He sent an email to her Phoenix Technologies corporate address. He knew it would likely be screened by assistants, probably deleted before she ever saw it. But he had to try. The email was 2,000 words of raw regret. He admitted everything: his arrogance, his stupidity, his complete failure to recognize real love when he had it. He detailed every sacrifice she'd made that he'd dismissed as ordinary. He confessed that Sophia had betrayed him with his brother, that he'd lost everything, but that losing money meant nothing compared to losing her. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote. "I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know that I understand now. I threw away a diamond while chasing after broken glass. You loved me when I was nothing, and I left you when I thought I was everything. The truth is, without you, I've always been nothing." He hit send at 3 a.m. Dubai time, then sat in his hotel room, staring at his laptop screen, waiting for a response that would never come. 6 months after the Dubai email, Harrison received a message that made him drop his phone. It was from Margaret's assistant at Phoenix Technologies. Just 2 lines. "Miss Winters will meet you once. St. Augustine Cathedral, Miami. Thursday, 2 p.m. The same cathedral, the same time, the same place where he'd destroyed everything 5 years ago. Harrison arrived an hour early, sitting in the same pew where his parents had sat that day. The church was empty except for him and his regrets. He looked like a ghost of his former self. His hair had gone completely gray at 42, deep lines carved around his eyes, the kind of hollowness that comes from realizing you've thrown away your life's only real treasure. At exactly 2 p.m., the cathedral doors opened. Margaret walked in, and Harrison forgot how to breathe. She moved with a confidence that radiated from within. Her simple navy dress probably cost less than Sophia's sunglasses, but she wore it like armor. Her hair was shorter now, professional but elegant. She glowed with the kind of peace that only comes from surviving hell and choosing not to become a demon. She sat 3 pews ahead of him, not beside him. The distance was deliberate, measured, a boundary drawn in sacred space. "You look terrible, Harrison," she said without turning around. Her voice was calm, no anger, no bitterness, just observation. "Margaret, let me speak first," she interrupted, still facing forward. "I know what you want to say. I read your email, all 2,000 words of it." Harrison moved forward 1 pew, but she held up her hand, stopping him. "Stay where you are. You lost the right to proximity 5 years ago." "I destroyed everything," Harrison's voice cracked. "You were my conscience, my anchor, your safety net," Margaret finished. "Your backup plan, your guarantee that someone would always be there no matter how badly you behaved. That's not—" "Harrison, stop. I'm not here to relitigate the past. I'm not here to forgive you either." She finally turned to look at him, and her eyes held something he didn't expect. "Gratitude. I'm here to thank you." Harrison felt like the floor had disappeared. "Thank me? You did me the greatest favor of my life. You showed me exactly what I was worth in your eyes, nothing. And in doing so, you forced me to discover what I was worth in my own eyes, everything." She stood, turning fully to face him now. "Do you know what I did the month after you left me at this altar? I cried until I had no tears left. I hid from the world. I wanted to disappear completely. And then I did disappear, but not the way you think. I disappeared from your narrative. I stopped being the supporting character in your story and became the protagonist of my own." "Margaret, please. The algorithm that built Phoenix Technologies? I created the foundation while you were coding your app. Those 3 jobs I worked, they taught me resilience you could never understand. Every sacrifice I made for you became a lesson in what I would never sacrifice again." She walked closer, just 1 pew away now. "You thought you were trading up with Sophia. You thought youth and beauty were an upgrade from loyalty and love. How did that work out for you?" Harrison's head dropped. "She destroyed me. Her and Danny, "I know," Margaret said simply. "Everyone knows." But here's what you don't understand. Even if Sophia had been faithful, even if she'd been perfect, you still would have lost. Because you can't build happiness on someone else's heartbreak. You can't find peace standing on someone else's ruins. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small photograph, placing it on the pew between them. It was an ultrasound image. "James and I are having a baby," she said softly. "A little girl. We're going to name her Hope." Harrison stared at the image, his vision blurring with tears he hadn't shed in years. "This isn't to hurt you," Margaret continued. "This is to show you what real love creates. Life, future, possibility. What we had created that too, but you burned it down for an Instagram fantasy." She turned to leave, then paused at the end of the pew. "You want my forgiveness, Harrison? I can't give you that. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm indifferent. You're a stranger to me now. The man I loved died 5 years ago in this cathedral. You're just someone wearing his face." As she walked toward the door, she stopped one final time without turning around. "But I will tell you this. You taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. Sometimes the person who breaks you is actually setting you free. Your betrayal didn't destroy me, Harrison. It created me." The cathedral door closed with an echo that seemed to last forever. Sometimes the person who breaks you ends up making you unbreakable. Have you ever reached a point where you could thank someone for betraying you because it led to something better? Share your story in the comments below. The cathedral meeting broke something in Harrison Vale, but sometimes things need to break before they can be rebuilt properly. 6 months after Margaret walked away from him forever, Harrison made his first appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, a therapist specializing in narcissistic collapse and genuine change. "I don't want to be this person anymore," he told her in their first session, holding the Forbes magazine with Margaret's picture. "I want to understand how I became someone capable of such cruelty." The therapy was brutal, unpacking years of entitlement, of treating people as stepping stones, of believing success meant you could discard anyone who'd helped you achieve it. Harrison discovered truths that made him physically ill. He'd inherited his father's pattern of abandoning people, the same father who'd left his mother when Harrison was 12 for a younger woman. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, Harrison made a radical decision. He sold his remaining assets, the cars, the watches, the last investment properties, everything except a modest apartment in Fort Lauderdale. The $30 million he raised went into creating the Second Chances Foundation, specifically designed to help people who'd been abandoned at altars, in business partnerships, or in long-term relationships where they'd sacrificed everything. The foundation's first recipient was a woman named Anna, who'd supported her partner through law school only to be left the day after he passed the bar exam. Harrison sat across from her, seeing Margaret's ghost in her confused, broken expression. "I can't undo what I did to someone who loved me," he told Anna. "But maybe I can help others avoid making my mistakes, or help victims of people like me rebuild." He wrote a book, The Cost of Betrayal, a cautionary tale, with every cent of the proceeds going to the foundation. The book was painfully honest, detailing every selfish decision, every moment he'd chosen ego over love. It became required reading in several business ethics courses, not as a success story but as a warning. Harrison now lives in a 2-bedroom apartment, drives a Honda Accord, and teaches free seminars on relationship ethics and the true cost of betrayal. He hasn't dated anyone since Sophia. "I need to become someone worth loving before I ask anyone to love me," he tells people who ask. While Harrison rebuilt himself from ashes, Margaret was building a legacy of joy. Her wedding to James was everything her first wedding wasn't. Intimate, genuine, held in a small chapel in Switzerland with only 20 guests. She wore a simple white dress she bought off the rack. James cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. "You're the strongest person I know," he whispered as they exchanged rings. "Not because you never fell, but because you chose to rise." Their daughter Hope was born on a snowy December morning. Margaret held her baby and thought about the children she might have had with Harrison, then let that thought go like releasing a balloon into the sky. This child, this life, this love, they were real, present, chosen. Phoenix Technologies evolved under Margaret's leadership. Beyond the algorithm, she launched an initiative called Rising Phoenix, a program providing free coding education and startup funding for women who'd sacrificed their careers for partners who later abandoned them. The first class had 100 students. By year 3, they were teaching 10,000 women globally. Margaret built schools in Miami's underserved communities, naming them after the nurses who'd mentored her during those grueling years of working and studying. She never forgot where she came from, never forgot the people who'd shown her kindness when she had nothing. In every interview, when asked about her success philosophy, she says the same thing. Success isn't about what you achieve, but about who you lift up along the way. I've been at the bottom. I know what it feels like to give everything and be left with nothing. My mission is to make sure other women know that rock bottom can be the foundation for something incredible. This story teaches us truths that money can't buy and success can't replace. True love isn't replaceable by youth or beauty. It's the person who sees you at your worst and chooses to stay, who works 3 jobs so you can chase your dreams, who celebrates your victories as their own. When you find that person, you don't trade them for a shinier model. You recognize them as the rare treasure they are. Success without integrity is a house of cards waiting for the first strong wind. Harrison built an empire but lost his soul. Margaret lost everything publicly but kept her integrity, and that integrity became the foundation for something unshakable. The person who stands by you in struggle deserves to share your success. They've earned it through sleepless nights, sacrificed dreams, and unwavering faith in you when you barely believed in yourself. Sometimes losing someone shows you exactly who you really are, and gives you the chance to become who you were meant to be. So what does this story really mean for you, watching right now from wherever you are in the world? Because let's be honest, we all face these crossroads, maybe not as dramatically as Harrison and Margaret, but the choices are the same. Every day we decide between loyalty and temptation, between the person who's been there through the struggle and the shiny new opportunity that promises something easier, between keeping our word and breaking it for what looks like a better deal. Maybe you're in a relationship right now with someone who supported you when you had nothing. Maybe you're that person doing the supporting, working multiple jobs, sacrificing your own dreams to help someone else build theirs. This story is your warning and your validation. The cost of betrayal isn't just losing someone who loved you, it's losing yourself. Harrison gained $1 billion company but lost his soul. He traded a woman who loved him for nothing for a woman who loved him for everything, and when everything disappeared, so did she. Meanwhile, Margaret lost her public dignity but kept her private integrity, and that integrity became the foundation for an empire that no one could take away. Her story mirrors anyone who's ever been underestimated, abandoned, or betrayed. The coworker passed over for promotion who starts their own company. The spouse left for someone younger who becomes the best version of themselves. The friend betrayed in business who builds something better alone. Margaret shows us that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing that ever happens to you. But here's the real question. Which character are you in this story? Are you the Harrison chasing after surface-level upgrades while abandoning deep-rooted love? Or are you the Margaret building something real whether or not anyone believes in you? If this story reminded you that karma is real and true love is priceless, please subscribe to the Penthouse Diaries. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell, because we share stories every week that prove success isn't about what you gain, but what you refuse to lose. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought about Harrison and Margaret's story. Have you ever witnessed karma this powerful in real life? Have you been the Margaret in someone's story? Or maybe you were the Harrison and learned your lesson? And remember this, the person supporting your dreams today deserves to celebrate your victories tomorrow. The one who loves you before you make it is worth 1,000 who only notice you after you've made it. Don't be a Harrison, be a Margaret. Better yet, be the person who recognizes a Margaret in your life and never lets them go. Next week I'll share the shocking story of a billionaire's son who gave up his entire inheritance for a waitress at a roadside diner, only to discover she was hiding a secret that would change everything. The twist in this story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about sacrifice and deception. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, real success isn't measured by what you achieve, but by who's genuinely happy for you when you achieve it.